8 Sinister and spine-chilling lake house tales from haunted Appalachia. Uncover the forbidden truths. Sarah Sinclair stood at the edge of the lake, the cold wind ripping through her hair. The sun sank low, spilling fiery hues across the murky water that seemed to pulse with secrets. From the dilapidated cabin behind her, an unsettling feeling gripped her heart. She felt eyes, unseen, watching from the shadows of the trees. Her family's escape to the lake house was supposed to be a breath of fresh air, but now her excitement felt like a bad joke, a cruel prank played by fate. As she turned to call for Mark, her husband, a chill swept over her. The air thickened, suffocating. Emma and Ben, their laughter now silenced, clung to each other, their wide eyes darting to the tree-line. "Did you see that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. She pointed, and Sarah turned just in time to catch a glimpse of something dark flitting between the trunks, a flicker of movement, gone as quickly as it came. Her heart raced, dread trailed behind her like an unwanted shadow. The locals at the diner had looked at them with thinly veiled suspicion, eyes glinting with something unspoken. "The water remembers," she recalled one of them muttering, a warning woven in tight with fear. Sarah had chuckled nervously, chalking it up to small-town superstition. Yet, now the weight of their gazes bore down on her, seeping into her bones. The water was still, but she felt an undercurrent of menace tugging at her. Night fell, and the cabin creaked ominously. Sarah stepped outside to breathe, hoping to shake off unease. As she approached the swimming pool, her breath caught. The water had turned an unsettling shade of deep green, swirling like a storm of shadows beneath the surface. Panic clawed at her throat. "Mark!" she called, her voice cracking. This was no simple algae problem, it felt alive, breathing, thrumming beneath the milky surface. Before they could evaluate, Sarah's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. An unknown number lit up the screen, and she felt a savage thrill of fear slice through her. "The water remembers." A cold sweat broke on her brow as she shoved the device back into her pocket. She scoured the darkness around them, a shape darting into view. Was she seeing things? Or was the forest conspiring against them? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mark appeared, rubbing his eyes, blinking in confusion. "Do you really want to stay here, Sarah?" he asked, his voice edged with fatigue. She opened her mouth to protest when she heard it, whispers cascading from the trees, echoing the messages in her mind. Even Emma and Ben were on edge, restless as shadows flitted past their peripheral vision. Anxiety pulsed in her veins as her grip tightened around Mark's hand. Then came the flicker of something thin and transparent quickly disappearing beneath the water. A moment later, the reflection in the pool didn't reflect them. Instead, it showed dark figures, eyes glinting with malice. A sudden thought gripped her, that dark family secrets danced beneath the lake's surface, ready to emerge and ensnare them. Sarah's pulse thrummed loudly in her ears. What waited beneath the water, lurking in the darkness, could be something sinister, something that would not let them leave. The lake was hungry, and it wasn't just memories it desired. As the night wore on, a sinister awakening loomed, revealing truths they weren't prepared to face. Frantic footsteps echoed on the wooden deck as Sarah grasped Mark's arm, a small gasp escaping her lips. "Did you see it? The reflection, they weren't us." Her voice trembled, terror seeped into her words, the magnitude of what they were facing feeling insurmountable. Mark fumbled with words, "Maybe it's just," but she cut him off, eyes wide as she pointed toward the pool. "No, Mark. It was something else, like shadows, angry shadows." Emma and Ben huddled closer, their eyes wide with confusion and fear, the playful children they had been just hours before now swallowed by the growing darkness. The whispers intensified, curling around them like smoke. A disembodied voice wafted through the trees, laced with malice. "Leave, or join us." The very air around them seemed to pulse, curling fingers of dread wrapping tightly around their chests. Mark's face paled. "We need to go inside," he urged, pulling Sarah back toward the cabin, but she resisted, staring into the pool. Each ripple seemed to beckon, luring her closer to its edge, enticing with forbidden promises. The night air thickened with dread, suffocating her resolve. Without thinking, she stepped nearer, her breath coming quick as shadows wove intricate patterns in the water. What lay beneath? A flicker of reflection caught her eye, a face, pale and unrecognizable. Her heart lurched. The foreboding in the locals' warning hit like ice in her veins. "The water remembers. I have to know," she whispered, half to herself. Sarah knelt at the water's edge, her fingertips grazing the surface, sending waves dancing, a tremor that shook her to her core. The reflection warped, distorting into shapes wraith-like phantoms reaching for her, merging with the cold depths. "Sarah!" "No!" Mark's voice sliced through the silence, panic lacing his tone. He lunged forward, pulling her back just as the surface erupted in a violent splash, sending droplets shimmering like stars into the darkness. Emma let out a small scream as Ben wrapped his arms around her tightly. "What did you see?" Mark demanded, his grip firm yet shaky. The shadows seemed to twist and coil around them, mocking their fear. I didn't want to see," Sarah stammered, shaking, her mind racing to comprehend everything unraveling around them. The water seethed as if alive, and she could feel each heartbeat echoing in unison with the pulse of the lake. "Let us go inside," Mark insisted, urgency swirling in his words. Reluctantly, Sarah nodded, but as they stepped back toward the cabin, a low growl erupted from the tree-line, freezing them in place. "Stay, or join us." It spoke again, the whisper now a menacing hiss that lingered thick in the air, a sound they could feel clustering against their skin like tendrils of frost. As they turned to run, a figure flickered at the edge of the trees, a silhouette emerging from the shadows, standing watch, silent and bleak. Sarah's heart hammered wildly, a desperate urge flowed through her veins. Dread sank like lead in her stomach. Was it a warning, or an invitation? Panic clawed at Mark's voice as he shouted behind them. What did it mean? They stumbled into the cabin, slamming the door shut just as the whispers crescendoed into a terrifying cacophony. It felt as if the entire forest held its breath, waiting. And inside, the air thickened, alive with anticipation. "What now?" Emma asked, voice trembling. A chilling realization invaded Sarah's thoughts. The lake wasn't just a body of water. It was a keeper of secrets, a dark entity hungry for souls. What truths lay in the depths that they had yet to uncover? As the shadows crept closer, a primal instinct surged within Sarah. This was just the beginning. The lake had awoken, and she feared that they were merely pawns in a game far beyond their understanding. Night enveloped the cabin, but as dread filled the spaces between them, one question burned fiercely in Sarah's mind: who would be the first to answer the lake's call? The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes as if the forest itself demanded entry. Sarah's heart raced. The flickering light from the lantern cast eerie shadows across the room, and for a moment, she thought she saw them stretched toward her like desperate hands. Mark paced, anxiety etched on his face. "We can't stay here. We need to call for help." The car's just outside. His voice trailed off, drowned out by the eerie whispers flowing through the cracks of the wood. "But what if it's out there?" Emma whimpered, her small hands trembling. "They're just shadows, that's all," Mark reassured her, though his voice lacked conviction. The younger kids pressed against each other like two frightened animals caught after dark. "Just shadows," Sarah echoed, but the doubt twisted her stomach. The sounds outside morphed into a chorus, one that felt ancient and unforgiving. Suddenly, a loud thump rattled the door, making them all jump. Sarah's breath hitched as dread filled the room. Had something or someone just struck the cabin? Check the windows, Mark instructed, his hand gripping the back of a chair like a lifeline. Sarah nodded, inching toward the nearest window with all the stealth she could muster, her heart pounding in rhythm with the whispers. She peered through the dusty glass, fingers trembling against the cool pane. The trees loomed closer, twisting and swaying as shadows darted between them, almost alive. But it wasn't the trees that made her gasp. No, it was the outline of a figure, pale and gaunt, standing just beyond the edge of light cast by the cabin. It wore a tattered dress that danced in the wind, and its face an empty void stared back at her. "Sarah! What do you see?" Mark urged, now sensing her fear. She turned, swallowing hard. Someone is out there. What do we do?" Ben squeaked, eyes wide, searching for answers but finding only fear reflected in Sarah's face. Before she could respond, the whispers intensified, their collective voices turning from honeyed persuasion to a demanding roar. Join us, we can't stay here," Mark shouted, shaking off his paralysis. "We need to move." But as they prepared to bolt, the lights flickered and went dark. The sudden plunge into darkness felt like a physical blow, plunging them into an ocean of fear. "Stay together." Mark grasped Emma's hand tightly, while Sarah held her breath. Then, without warning, the cabin door swung open. A chilling breath of night rushed in, pulling back the curtains and swirling dust around them. The figure remained outside, still and unyielding. Sarah felt the air shift, a presence hovering just beyond the wooden frame. Sarah, a voice intoned, and it was a voice she recognized, soft and soothing, like a distant memory. "Help us." Her body stiffened as she recognized it. It was her mother's voice, a lullaby from childhood mixed with a strange, cold gravity. "Help who?" She found herself calling, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "Join us, remember us." A mix of panic and disbelief washed over her. "You're not real. You can't be." "No, but we are." The whispers twisted around her like smoke, weaving into her thoughts, forming memories intertwined with terror. Mark pulled her back, urgency painting his features. "Don't listen. It's a trick." But the shadows twisted, alive with her childhood fears and deepest sorrows. Could she trust them, this voice that mimicked someone she had loved? Or would it drag her down into that depth, past the veil of silence and darkness? The door rattled again, and as Sarah fought against the pull of the shadows, she felt something icy wrap around her ankle, sharp as glass. "Sarah! Get away from it!" Mark screamed, lunging forward, but the shadows within the cabin thickened. Suddenly, the pain in her leg intensified, and with it came clarity. Whatever the lake had unleashed wouldn't stop until it had one of them or all of them. In that moment of terror, she realized some visitors never leave the lake. They merely wait, beckoning others with promises of comfort wrapped in dark intentions. "What are we going to do?" Emma cried, her wide eyes etched with fear. And just as Sarah turned to answer, a deafening crash sounded from outside. Something or someone broke through the tree line, a figure moving toward them with vicious intent. The lake's thirst was ravenous, and they were next on its menu. What twisted truth had they awakened, and would they escape its grasp before dawn? The figure moved closer, a dark specter gliding against the gnarled trees, each step echoing in the hollow stillness. Beneath the flickering lantern light, its unnaturally elongated limbs bore testament to the horrors that lurked within the depths of the forest. Glimpses of a disfigured face surfaced and vanished in a pulse of shadow, like a bad dream slipping from memory. "Mark!" Sarah's voice broke, a thin thread of panic slicing through the thick air. "What is that? We have to do something. Get back!" Mark ordered, shoving the chair in front of them, mounting a last-ditch barrier against the malevolence advancing. The shadows outside flickered in response, swirling like a tempest that threatened to tear the very cabin apart. As the grasping winds battered them, Sarah felt the whispers clawing at her mind, drowning her in a sea of forgotten memories and unfulfilled wishes. "Come to us, Sarah, we've been waiting." No. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the memories. Her mother's embrace, the stories told under starlit skies, each one twisted into a trap from which she might never escape. "Emma, stay close," Mark yelled, even as he sprinted to close the windows. He slammed them shut, but the whispers crept through the gaps, curling like smoke through the air. A sudden, sickening crack sounded, splintering through the cacophony. The door had splintered where the figure pounded against it. As Sarah turned, she spotted another figure flitting between the trees. They were everywhere, faces twisted and contorted into expressions of grief, anguish so deep it was palpable. "Help us," they sang in eerie harmony, their voices climbing higher and mixing into a single, discordant note. Mark fought against the door, trying to hold it shut as it rattled ominously, echoing with the fury of the outside world. "We need to find something to barricade this." But before he could retreat from the door, the spectral figure let out a harrowing wail, a sound drenched in pain. It sent shockwaves through Sarah's core. She had no idea where the next blow would land, how to fight against a haunting that clawed at their very souls. The floor vibrated beneath them, an ominous tremor that felt like the heartbeat of the lake itself, alive and hungry. Sarah's heart raced. This was not just about her. The lake sought more than her fear, it craved her very essence. "Sarah." Mark's voice was strained as he wrestled with the door, desperately attempting to hold back the ominous force. "We have to leave now." "Where?" she shouted back. The thought of stepping outside gripped her with terror. But the cabin was crumbling under the relentless pressure of the storms outside, and shadows writhed like serpents, hungry and unrelenting. Something cold brushed against her ankle again, like a whispering tendril of darkness. She realized the supernatural force wanted to pull her into the dark, to rip apart the fragile membrane between life and void. "Sarah!" Emma sobbed, tears streaming down her small cheeks, hope draining from her voice. "I'm scared." "Stay together," Mark hissed, gnashing his teeth in frustration. "Don't let them separate us." Before they could form a plan, the door splintered, and with a final, lunging thrust, the entity broke through, flooding the cabin with a suffocating chill. A blinding light burst from its depths, illuminating the figures outside, revealing broken faces and ghastly grins that distorted the very essence of fear. Mark pulled Emma close, and Sarah felt herself being drawn into the luminous grasp of a siren's call, offering comfort yet steering her toward destruction. "Join us, Sarah," they beckoned, voices threading around her, binding her in an inescapable web. In that moment of horror, clarity seized her. She had a chance, but it meant facing the terror head-on. "Run!" she shouted, grabbing Mark's arm. "We need to go." But as they turned toward the windows, the nightmare morphed. A red flash split the air. What was once a shadow became a figure, rounder, sharper, and grinning with malice. With a thundering roar, it lunged. Would they break free from the beckoning dark, or were they truly ensnared in a tale destined to repeat? The figure lunged, and time twisted. Mark's instinct kicked in, yanking Sarah and Emma back just as the malevolent shape collided with the doorframe. Wood splintered, sending shards ricocheting across the room. The air filled with a dreadful smell, like rotting leaves and damp earth, saturating them with an overwhelming sense of decay and despair. "Get to the back!" Mark shouted, his voice barely rising above the chaotic cacophony. Sarah could scarcely think. She moved on instinct, pulling Emma along through the narrow passage that led to the kitchen. Her heart thundered in her chest, bleeding panic with every step. As they stumbled into the old kitchen, Sarah swung around to face the door. The shadow loomed larger, its form ethereal, a writhing mass of despair and fury. The whispers tightened their grip, wrapping around her throat, urging her to turn back, to surrender. Mark reached for the old kitchen table, its wooden surface was stained and scratched. "Help me!" he shouted, but the words echoed dimly as though they were far away. Together, they pushed the table against the door, the entire cabin vibrating from the impact. The sound was horrific, a shrieking chorus that seemed to taunt their every move, each note piercing deeper into their sanity. "Don't let it get in," Emma whimpered, her wide eyes reflecting unfiltered terror. The shadows wove behind her, ever hungry, thrumming with life. "Stay back," Mark said, shielding Emma with his body. But the very air felt weighty, suffocating, like the lake was breathing onto them. Dark, wet silhouettes pressed against the windows, faces contorted into haunting sorrow. "What do they want?" Sarah cried, the confusion clawing at her mind, mingling with the fear. "Us. They want us," Mark shouted, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. The figures outside began to murmur in low tones, their voices laced with something sinister. "You belong with us forever." With agonizing slowness, cracks began to form along the door, the relentless force pushing against it becoming an unstoppable tide. Sarah felt her resolve crumbling. She had to act. In a moment of lucidity amidst the chaos, she turned to Mark. "The basement. We can hide down there." Mark's face flickered with doubt, but the door buckled again, and he nodded quickly, "Let us move." They ran, panic pulling them forward as the dark mass snarled, pressing at their heels. Their feet collided with the coarse wooden stairs leading down, the unsettling creak echoing in the stillness. The basement door shut with a finality that echoed louder than thunder. Blackness enveloped them, the air was damp and thick, almost alive. Sarah's fingers brushed the wall, and they found it chilling, clammy. "Do you see anything?" she whispered, fear constricting her throat. "No," but Mark sucked in a breath, his urgency palpable. "It can't follow us down here. Right?" But even as he spoke, the whispers morphed into a thunderous roar. The darkness shifted, seemingly closing in, and fear tightened like a noose around Sarah's heart. Suddenly, a single beam of light broke through the dark. From deep within the shadows, there came a flicker, a lantern, faint yet inviting. "What is that?" Emma gasped, her voice small. "Stay close," Mark urged as they cautiously approached the light, and just as they neared it, a dreadful realization washed over them. A figure stood before the lantern, one they hadn't seen before, a woman, her face swollen with grief, eyes hollow yet pleading. "Help us," she sobbed, and her voice was a cold blade. It stretched a hand toward them, and Sarah's stomach dropped. They had entered a new horror, but it was only the beginning. What if the quest for answers led them deeper into a nightmare? Would they find a way out or be forever trapped in a cycle of horror? The woman's hand trembled in the flickering light, her fingers skeletal, ghostly. The air thickened as they all hovered between fear and curiosity. Sarah felt a nauseating twist in her gut. "Who are you?" Mark's voice cracked, masking his true fear with bravado. "What do you want from us?" "Help us," she collapsed to her knees. The lantern's light danced on her features, making the shadows around her even more pronounced. It was like watching a nightmare unfold, a beautiful nightmare. Emma stepped back, her small hands pulling at Mark's shirt. "Don't get too close," she whispered, but it was too late. Mark was already crouching down, the space between them overwhelming with anticipation and dread. The woman's eyes widened with urgency, which morphed into a pleading stare. "You have to listen, the lake it remembers." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the oppressive silence of the basement, it felt like a scream. "Listen to what?" Sarah asked, her heart roaring in her ears. "What do you mean?" "The souls they drown in despair, their pain, it bleeds into the water." Her voice quivered, laced with an urgency that sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. "They want you to join them." Suddenly, a terrible force jolted through the basement. The walls seemed to shake, and the lantern flickered violently. Shadows encroached closer, pulling, stretching. The whispers reached a fever pitch, horrifying syllables woven together like a twisted lullaby. "Get away from her!" Mark shouted, but it only fueled the darkness. The basement door slammed shut with a jarring thud, sealing them in. Cold tendrils curled around their ankles, creeping up their limbs, squeezing tighter. "Run!" Sarah screamed, adrenaline surging through her veins. They needed to escape the grasp of that darkness. Mark yanked Emma up, and they rushed toward the staircase, the weight of suffocating despair clawing at them. The shadows coiled tighter, biting at their heels as they stumbled backward. "Go!" Mark yelled, his eyes wide with the rawness of terror. Sarah turned, her instincts guiding her as she pushed past Emma, urging her to follow. With every step, the light from the lantern dimmed, flickering out like a dying star. A wailing cry echoed, intertwining with their frantic breaths. It felt as if the very essence of the basement was screaming, pleading for them to stay. The stairs creaked ominously beneath them, as if betraying their flight. They reached the top only to find the door wasn't just shut, it was locked, irrevocably sealed. Mark slammed his fists against the wood. "Let us out!" he yelled. "Please don't leave me." The woman's pleading voice slipped from the darkness, soft yet piercing. It wrapped around them like a ghostly embrace, filled with sorrow. "Mark, what if we can't get out?" Emma whimpered, her small voice cracking. "What if we're stuck here?" "No. We can't." Sarah insisted, her heart racing faster every second. She rushed back to the door, hurling her shoulder against it, again and again. It wouldn't budge. The cold air turned bitter, and she felt the darkness creeping back, lingering like a predator. There has to be another way. Mark's face twisted with desperation. Suddenly, something shifted in the shadows. A glimpse of movement, something rising from the darkness behind them. An echo of tormented lives, an outline of gnarled shapes that seemed to merge into one collective agony. Sarah turned back just in time to see the woman rise, her eyes now ablaze with an otherworldly light. "You must choose," she whispered, but her voice was no longer mournful. It was something else, something hauntingly seductive. What kind of choice was there in a place like this? Trust the woman or flee into the blinding dark? The shadows shuddered around them as the air grew heavier, every second stretching into eternity. Would they choose salvation, or would they succumb to despair? As Emma trembled, holding on to Mark's leg, they heard a slow clap echoing through the chamber, an unsettling applause coming from the shadows. It was only the beginning of their reckoning what awaited them in the depths of that cabin. The shadows swirled, a cacophony of whispers filling the air, each word intertwined with a primal fear. Sarah felt the space around them pulsing like a living thing, each heartbeat an ominous reminder of their dire situation. The woman's glowing eyes bored into them, and Sarah shivered under the weight of her gaze. "What do we have to choose?" Mark demanded, his voice shaky but defiant. He stepped closer to the woman, his instinct still urging him to protect Emma and Sarah, even as the air crackled with menace. "You must decide which of you will stay." Her voice dripped with something that felt almost like temptation, compelling and dreadful all at once. "The lake thrives on sorrow. It needs a sacrifice." "Stay? What does that mean?" Emma cried, rooted to the spot, her wide eyes darting from Sarah to Mark. "We can't leave anyone behind." The basement floor shuddered beneath them, shaking as if in response to Emma's words. The lantern flickered, threatening to extinguish under a growing wave of despair. Shadows twisted and morphed, shaping into grotesque visages. Ghostly faces contorted in suffering, mouths open in silent screams. Sarah's heart raced. "This can't be real," she muttered, forcing herself to breathe through the increasing dread. "There has to be another way." The woman's expression softened momentarily, revealing a flicker of sorrow beneath the dark power cloaking her. "You don't understand. There is no escape without a price." Mark turned to Sarah, and in that moment, she could see the pain painted on his face. "I want to let you go, Sarah. If anyone stays, it'll be me," he declared, clenching his fists. The thought that one of them might have to sacrifice their freedom gnawed at Sarah's insides, turning her stomach to lead. "What if the choice isn't about one of us?" Sarah whispered, her mind racing. "What if we find a way to fight this?" The woman's laughter echoed, chilling and hollow. "Fighting is futile. The lake craves your pain. It feeds off despair, and the more you resist, the deeper its hunger grows." As she spoke, the shadows surged toward them like a tide, tendrils reaching for their limbs, pulling at their will. Sarah felt them wrapping around her ankles, the cold gripping her tighter than despair itself. "Look!" Emma pointed to another shadow shifting, moving closer through the thick darkness. It was different from the anguished wails, it moved with purpose, the air thickening as it approached. "Don't!" Mark shouted, pushing Sarah and Emma back. But it was too late. A figure materialized from the gloom, its outline barely discernible, but the malevolence it radiated was palpable. The air shifted, carrying a familiar scent, a sickly sweetness, like decay and forgotten memories. "Enough games," the figure hissed. "You've been summoned. There are repercussions for your intrusion." The darkness writhed, growing frenzied at its master's command. "One shall stay, or all shall fall into the depths." The air buzzed with a new intensity. "What are you?" Mark managed, taking a step backward, fear etching lines across his face. The figure leaned closer, revealing a face of shadows and void. "I am the keeper of lost souls. The lake's anchor. Your fears give me power. Each choice leads to new torment." The weight of hopelessness crashed down on them. Choices were being made in the darkness, whispering behind their backs, promising salvation through sacrifice. Sarah's vision narrowed on the door, still sealed, but perhaps not impenetrable. "Together," she said, her voice breaking the hold of despair. "If we fight, all three of us, we can break this." The shadows recoiled, howling in frustration at the very idea. Sarah could feel the tension shifting, a crack forming in the overwhelming darkness. The keeper's face twisted in rage, and suddenly, the spirit's cries intensified, an orchestra of agony and yearning. "Your bond is a threat," it screamed. "The bargain was laid, and now you will pay." As the final word left its lips, the shadows exploded around them, a whirlwind of despair threatening to swallow them whole. "Hold on!" Mark yelled, grabbing Emma's hand. And pulling Sarah tight. And in that moment, the lantern flickered violently before going out completely. In the suffocating blackness, terror enveloped them, but then a faint glimmer appeared, illuminating a single path ahead. Could it lead to their escape or deeper into the lake's grasp? What awaited them in that fragile light? Would it be the freedom they sought or a descent into unending nightmares? The light was weak, barely cutting through the suffocating dark. Sarah squinted, her heart hammering in her chest, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The shadows writhed behind them, a boiling mass of fury and despair, but the faint glow seemed to beckon them forward. "Is it safe?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "I don't know," Mark replied, his grip tight on Emma's hand, his eyes scanning the ominous blackness. "But I'd rather take a chance than wait here for whatever that is." The keeper's shriek echoed in the distance, a haunting sound that sliced through the heavy air. They had to move. The path was narrow, the coolness of the damp stone underfoot sent chills cascading up Sarah's spine as they ventured deeper into the unknown. "What if it's a trap?" Sarah's voice quavered, fear creeping in like a shadow. "Then we'll face it together," Mark said, but uncertainty laced his tone. The flickering light shifted as they walked, revealing more of the space around them. Walls covered in grotesque etchings seemed to pulse, as if alive. Faces twisted in agony stared back at them, their hollow eyes filled with sorrow. Sarah stumbled, barely catching herself. Keep moving, Mark urged. Panic guided his footsteps, propelling them forward. But then, flickers of doubt swept through Sarah. What if this light doesn't lead us to safety? What if it brings us closer to the lake, to the keeper? Emma stopped, tugging lightly on Mark's arm. We can't go any further into this, she protested. We need to figure out how to get out of here. Before they could argue more, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. The walls quaked, and the energy shifted. The sound of rushing water echoed ominously, rising in volume. Sarah felt her scalp prickle, as if something far worse was approaching. We have to go back, she shouted, panic igniting her voice. No! Don't go back into the dark, Mark yelled, pulling them forward. His expression was set, determined. The light began to flicker violently, casting long shadows that danced grotesquely on the walls. It pulsed like a heartbeat, quicker now, and with it, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around Sarah like a chilling embrace. Words she couldn't make out merged with a feeling of despair. Suddenly, a wicked smile spread across the keeper's shadowy figure as it loomed closer. You cannot escape your fate. You're bound to the lake now. It hissed, the sound deafening in the narrow passage. Out of the shadows, the water surged, clawing at their feet, pulling them backward, as if begging them to surrender. The glimmering light ahead dimmed, flickering uncertainly, like a flame on the verge of extinguishing. Fight it! Mark yelled, desperation lacing his voice. He bent down, grasping at the cold stone, trying to anchor himself against the invisible tide. Emma closed her eyes, her breath shaking, hands trembling as she reached for Sarah. We cannot let it win. We are stronger than this. With a sudden rush of resolve, Sarah stepped forward, moving against the violent pull of the water. Together! She shouted, her voice a battle cry, swallowing her fear. The light flared brighter momentarily, igniting hope. But the shadows shrieked back, rising like a wall before them, pressing in. They could feel the despair clawing at their minds, whispering sweet promises of safety, enticing them to give in. In that moment, Sarah realized they were caught in a twisted game of sacrifice and survival. The light flickered one last time before winking out completely, plunging them into a deeper darkness. And then, silence. Were they lost forever, eternally entwined in the lake's malevolent grasp? Or was there still a path forward? The question slashed at Sarah's heart as dread seeped in. What choice remained for them in this relentless night? The darkness wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud. No sound, no light, just the weight of despair pressing in. Sarah felt a cold sweat bead on her forehead. She could hardly breathe. Mark? Emma's voice trembled in the silence, frail and small. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm right here. Mark's voice was hoarse. His hand found Sarah's, gripping it tight. We can't lose each other. Sarah swallowed hard. But what are we supposed to do now? As if in response to their plight, a whisper slithered through the void, brushing past their ears like a rustling leaf. It was a taunting, breathy hiss that seemed to echo their fears. You cannot escape. The air felt charged, electric with malice. A sudden rush of cold air swept through the corridor, the unmistakable scent of damp earth and decay filling their nostrils. The darkness thickened, stifling, filling every crevice of their minds with panic. I need to see, Sarah stammered, fumbling for her phone in her pocket. She flicked on the flashlight, and the beam sliced through the blackness a sliver of hope. The light danced across the walls, revealing nightmarish faces merged into grotesque figures. It was as if the rock itself was part of the lake, entrapped in its malignant grasp. They looked like they were crying out, mouths twisted in silent screams. Oh my God, Emma gasped, stepping back, bumping against Mark. This isn't real. This can't be real. It's real. Mark's voice trembled. Every part of this place is alive. We have to keep moving. As they stepped cautiously deeper, the water continued to surge, clawing at their ankles. An unholy cacophony erupted in the distance, screams mingled with laughter, a chilling mix that made their hearts race. Suddenly, the hall exploded with light. Reddish flames flickered to life all around them, illuminating the grotesque etchings in the stone. But the warmth felt wrong, malignant, almost as if the flames were a warning, a beacon beckoning them toward a more ominous fate. "What is happening?" Sarah shouted, her voice nearly swallowed by the uproar. It was like the walls themselves were alive with fury. "We have to get out of here." Mark yanked at Sarah's sleeve, pulling her forward. They bolted down the corridor, heartbeats drumming in unison, fueled by blind terror. But the colors began to swirl, the light bending into shadows, distorting their path. With every frantic step, Sarah felt as if they were running deeper into the lake's embrace, spiraling into an ever-foggy abyss. Above the clamor, a voice erupted, booming like thunder. "You dare defy the Keeper? You will pay the price." "What price?" Emma cried out, desperation leaking into her tone. "What do you want from us?" "Your souls are forfeit." It growled, the walls vibrating with its anger. "You are all bound to the lake, whether you acknowledge it or not." A wave of icy water enveloped Sarah's legs, freezing her in place. She fought against it, but she felt it gripping harder, constricting like a vice. I can't move." "Hold on." Mark yelled, yanking at her, but the water turned merciless, sucking them down toward an unseen depth. "Fight it!" Emma shouted, grasping at anything she could hold on to, flailing in panic. But the laughter grew louder, echoing in their minds, drowning out their resolve. Then the whisper returned, soft and sickly sweet. "Surrender and be free." "No." Sarah screamed, her heart pounding in her throat. "We won't give in." But as the darkness enveloped them again, she wondered how much longer could they resist? Would they break before their strength gave out? The weight of despair threatened to pull them under as the shadows reached for them once more. What terrible secrets awaited them in the depths of the lake? Would they be ready to face the truth or finally succumb? The cold grip of despair clutched Sarah as she drifted, pulled deeper into darkness, her mind battling against surrender. Suddenly, a pulse of light danced on the edge of her vision, breaking through the oppressive gloom. It flickered, illuminating the faces of shadows that swirled restlessly around her, their expressions imbued with a sorrowful hunger. Emma's frantic cries pulled at her heart like an anchor. "Sarah! We have to fight back!" Mark shouted, the urgency in his voice cutting through the blanket of dread. "Together!" Sarah gasped, a fierce determination ignited within her. She reached for her family, wrapping her arms around them as the shadows lashed out, seeking to rip them apart. The icy tendrils snaked closer, coiling around their legs, trying to drag them down. "Hold tight!" Mark yelled, planting his feet firmly on the ground. They huddled, creating a tableau against the chaos, and in that vulnerable moment of unity, something shifted. The shadows quivered, momentarily retreating as if they had encountered a wall impenetrable to their darkness. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah shouted into the abyss, "You won't take us. We are more than your fears." Each word felt like a declaration, a beam of defiance aimed right at the heart of despair. In response, the darkness pulsed as an echoing roar filled the space. The Keeper's fury was palpable. "You think yourselves free? You are bound to this lake, to this pain." The words ricocheted within the depths of her mind, threatening to drown her spirit. "No!" Emma cried, the clarity of her voice cutting through the cacophony. "We won't be afraid anymore." With that brief spark, something miraculous happened. The shadows began to recede, reluctantly dwindling back as though the light of their shared strength was a force pushing against the oppressive darkness. Sarah felt warmth infiltrate the cold, tinged with love, a love that unfurled like a flower breaking through the frost, penetrating each tendril that sought to restrain them. "Focus," Mark urged, eyes closed tight. "Think of happier times, family, home togetherness. Images flooded Sarah's mind. Summer picnics, laughter echoing through the backyard, Emma's first bike ride, Mark's warm, reassuring hugs. The tapestry of memories wove through her, fortifying her spirit. All of your memories become your truths. Sarah shouted, forcing the darkness back. Your fears don't hold power over us anymore. With each shared recollection, light burst forth first as a flicker, then glowing brighter, creating a blinding beacon that pierced through the school of shadows creeping around them. The keeper's form undulated, its edges fraying as if burnt by their collective brightness, agony twisting its visage. No! It bellowed, a voice steeped in rage and desperation, thrashing in rebellion. You cannot defy the lake's hunger. But they were unwavering now, an unbreakable bond shielding them from despair. Sarah pulled Emma and Mark closer. Remember who we are. At once, the light erupted, enveloping them in a radiance that pushed back the dark, like the sun reclaiming its throne at dawn. And just like that, they were lifted upon a sea of luminous resonance, the keeper's tumultuous grasp shredded, breaking apart like paper in fire. Sarah's heart soared as the nightmare faded away. They surged forward, breaking through the lingering shadows into a place warm and cleansing, as if they ascended into clarity. The water released its hold, evaporating into mere echoes of the horrors that had sought to claim them. As they emerged, they found themselves standing trembling but whole on the riverbank, the lake quiet and reflective under the dawn light. Sunlight glimmered like gold upon the surface, trembling with memories of what had once been. It's over? Emma whispered, blinking at the new day unfolding before them. Mark gasped, wrapping his arms around both of them, pulling them tight. We did it. We're free. But Sarah felt a pang in her chest, another lingering truth spoke within. The lake it remembers, she murmured, understanding who they had left behind, the souls entrapped by despair. They carried a flicker of the lake's sorrow, whispering lost stories into the morning mist. Will they be okay? Emma asked, worry etching faint lines on her young forehead. Maybe, Mark said softly, a flicker of sorrow piercing his words. The brave will always carry the memory of loved ones. One final gaze lingered on the lake, knowing that in their battle, others would seek a way to overcome its haunting embrace. Yet they had survived, and together, they bore both the weight of grief and the strength of hope. As they turned away, heading back to the cabin, a promise swirled in the air between them, more potent than any binding darkness. They would always remember the lake and share its stories, weaving light into every shadow. And in that promise, they knew they were alive. So, before you go, make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.